Hi, everybody. It's Meg Czapiewski with Honorable Service Realty Group here with your November market update. So we'll be looking at stats in October or up through 31 October. I did this a little differently this time so that I could click through some of our slides a little faster because I want to do a little deep dive when we get to Prince William County. Going directly into our Fairfax County, new contracts, those contracts or those homes that went under contract in the month of October. We typically do see a seasonal downtrend in October because we usually see a little uptick in September. Fairfax blended information on this one shows exactly that kids went back to school for whatever reason. That always seems to bring a little bit of activity in September, a slight bump, and then we start to see people get into holiday mode. And so October is typically not as strong, but look, that's only 1%. So that's not anything to overthink. But what I was curious about and dug deeper in several of the stats was if that's 1%, like where did we see it? Was it in the townhomes, in the single family? Was it across the board? And the reality is because of the blend of this data, it really shows an inaccurate picture in the grand scheme of things because this 20% drop in condo and co-op sales in Fairfax County brought down the single family home and the townhome, which were both up. So the average really doesn't reflect what we saw in the market, quite honestly. What we saw in the market was an increase in new contracts in both townhomes and single family homes, which make up more of the market than the condo co-op market in Fairfax. But it was so significant of a drop that we had to show it to explain what went on. And that when you go to the other two counties, which we don't even pay attention to condos and co-ops because they're just not a significant part of the total inventory in those two counties, you'll see an October increase. And that's really what we saw in Fairfax too. All right, supply and demand, and we were typically just looking at supply and demand and not really focusing that much on days on market, but I wanted to show these two together. And actually, this is the days on market. This is the supply and demand. So days on market, what we were typically seeing, all three counties actually, is right as the holidays are over, you start to see activity in the market. And that activity is bringing your days on market very low because the inventory is just starting to come on. The buyers are ready. They're jumping on it. And as we get more and more inventory, they have more and more choices and those days on market rise. In months or in years past, what we would see is, homes come on the market, homes come off the market, boom, boom, boom. And you didn't really see an excessive amount of inventory accumulate. But as we've been talking about all year, or at least since like May or June of this year, is that we are seeing that accumulated inventory. And that's where you get the 2 weeks versus 2 months. This graph shows how quickly homes that are going under contract are getting under contract. This is showing an accumulation of things that didn't get picked up in their first 2 weeks and got kicked to the next 2 weeks and then the next 2 weeks and the next 2 weeks. And now they're upwards of 2 months before we could attrit all of that inventory if nothing else came on the market and if buyers kept buying at the pace that we currently observe them buying at. That clearly does play into the pricing. And there's been a fairly flat trajectory of equity building or pricing, but year over year, and frankly, when you went back, each of these months was a year over year increase on single family homes. So though it does look fairly flat, this is helping. And because this is in this October is 4.4% higher than October of 2024. Each of these months was also somewhat higher than 2025. There should be a solid equity build in 2025 for single family homes, and the current median price is $940,000. Townhomes, the median price is $649,900 in Fairfax, and they're up 3% in the month of October. But it was a mixed bag, or more. There were more months where we actually saw a drop in year-over-year pricing, and then there were quite a few months where we saw an increase. So a little hard to tell exactly what that's going to look like when we get, national data that helps us understand, what does the overall home value look like as a whole in 2025 as compared to 2024. And then condos, it still represents the least amount of sales in Fairfax. And there was no change in price, or no change in year-over-year data. There was a $25,000 drop in September's data versus October's median value. October is $375,000, but it showed no change October 25 to October 24. All right, we're going to go all the way down to Stafford, and then we'll do a little bit more of a deep dive in Prince William. Stafford County new contracts also showed up as an increase, 4.8%, but it was not an increase for single family homes. It was a slight decrease year over year, and the big winner was townhomes at 7.4%. Across the board, we saw dips in September. Not exactly sure why things slowed down in September. Typically, you would see that be higher than October, and you would have thought, especially with our government shutdown and how that impacts our local market, that October would not have been a bump, but it was, and here's the data. The strong October rebound in the townhome purchases did bring our overall numbers up, and that's, basically devil in the details, like I mentioned before. Stafford County supply and demand, in this case, this was the median days on market, that U-shaped picture where January all the way down to April was, a fast pace, and the things that were coming on the market were quickly coming off of the market. But as we all saw a slowdown, May in Fairfax, but April in Prince William and Stafford, which is much earlier than we typically see. But for whatever reason, or for a lot of reasons, the buyers were more cautious, and inventory started to accumulate. Days on market got a little higher, sitting right at 21 days on market for those that are going under contract. But cumulative inventory is pushing that supply and demand up to 3 months. So 3 weeks versus 3 months of inventory if nothing more comes on and buyers keep buying at the same pace. Let's look at median sales price in Stafford. Here, we do not bother to look at condos and townhomes. I think the condo sits all the way on this bottom line. I'm not even sure they have any over there. But single family home, 560,000, that is up just slightly, 0.7%. There have been steady increases year over year each month. So with the exception of September, we saw a dip in activity. Makes sense then. We would possibly see a dip in sales price year over year, and that is exactly what we saw. Same thing in townhomes, but townhomes had a more mixed bag, just like we saw in Fairfax, where there was a lot of positive year over year months and also several drops in year over year values when you took any given month and compared it to that same month in 2024. So jury is going to be out on the townhomes, so I think the single family homes continue to show a stronger propensity for equity gain. Okay, into Prince William, up 7% year over year when you blend it. but single family homes were down 4%, whereas the townhomes did a pretty good rally of 23% year over year. I was like, okay, so what that means here, I don't know if I can go back or not. I can. I'm thinking it's because people are looking for things that are at more moderate price points. Affordability continues to be a problem across the country for our housing market. And so my expectation was the reason this was so much higher than single family was because townhomes are cheaper than single family most of the time. And I proved myself wrong. So when you actually blow this out to price points, the different price ranges that you see here that make up the majority of the sales in Prince William County, that wasn't the case. So this green one, that's the highest number of sales. It was like 150, just slightly, like maybe 135 contracts by price point. This is pendings, right? These haven't sold. We don't know what price they will close at, but we do know what price they listed at. And the majority of homes that went under contract were in the 400 to 499 range. Could be townhomes, could be single family, probably a mix of both. The second highest was all the way down in the 699 to 799. Hold on, let me put these glasses on, make sure I'm reading these. 600K to 799 was the next highest in terms of volume. And yet the greatest increase was all the way down here. This is a year over year increase of 68%, was in the 1.1 to 2.5 million range. I could understand that possibly part of that is just because we have seen such steady equity growth year over year that maybe in 2024 we didn't have as many homes in Prince William County that were priced at 1 to 2.5. And so now that there are more in that price range, you see that year over year growth. You also saw a really good year over year growth in this one right here, which was 200 to 299. So things under 300. And that was like 50% year over year growth. So I'll go back to that the bottom line is that these were all increases year over year, except for the 600 to 799, which still saw the most number of sales, but represents probably the median inventory range for Prince William County in single family homes and probably also in some townhomes as well. So devil in the details, these investors are kicking up in activity level. I think maybe maybe homeowners that are using this as a primary residence are also looking for those very economical priced homes under 300,000. But if you're curious about where you might fall, good to know that these are all year over year increases, but people are typically shopping in the 400 to 499, the 600 to 799, and the 500 to 599. Those are the top three that are getting the most contracts. All right, moving on to median sales price. I'm skipping over the days on market and supply just for a moment so that I can link these things together a little bit smarter. Median sales price for single family home in October was 730,000. That's up 9.6% year over year. And it's also up, you can see it's up over like pretty much the whole rest of the year. So that's a little surprising. The only dip that we had in an equity earn year over year was in the month of June. That's here. And other than that, that was a small dip of just 2%. But other than that, we've seen some very strong year over year gains. So good news for single family homes. In the townhomes, the median sales price was $497. And yeah, that's actually up between October of 2025 and 2024. barely 1.8%, but it is up. And they have had a very mixed bag of increased and decreased. So one month they're up, another month they're down. Hard to tell whether or not this overall represents an equity gain, a small equity gain, or maybe even a large equity gain. We'll see in December when that data comes out. All right, supply and demand, same pattern. The big dip when from January down to February, March, and April and May, that the homes were flying off the market a little faster, and yet the inventory did start to accumulate as early as December. Quite honestly, it just kept coming up and coming up, and we see just a slow tick below two months in October. So 2 weeks versus 2 months. Homes that went under contract, homes that are still to be had in inventory in Prince William County. Now, this is what I've validated, I guess, by this set of graphs, because here is that dip. And this one I've never showed before, but it is the range, the ratio of list price to original list price to what the house went under contract. So we're not talking about pendings anymore. We're talking about, what it sold at. So we're not talking about pendings anymore. We're talking about what it first listed at versus what it ultimately sold at. And if you can kind of envision the reverse of this dip here. And if you pulled out the highest, those 1 million to 2.5 million, and the lowest, the 200 to 299, which are kind of the outskirts, and you really focused in on the bulk of the inventory in the county, you would see that they're getting, for the most part, list price or above. List price or above, list price or above, except for this one stray something between 1 and 2.5 million. And the only things really falling below in all of January forward is the outliers, the very, very cheap and the very, very expensive, until this accumulating inventory starts hitting. And even then, it's not until August that we see this big spread that we see here and we see here. But this is still representing about 98% of original list price. So they're going under contract about 2%, 1 to 2% below, and in a couple cases still like at or 1% above the original list price. But it's this spread is because of this, and also because things that are ending up here weren't priced properly to get picked up in the lowest days on market, in that fastest pace. They sat. Buyers passed on them. Buyers did not see the value in those homes. And so now you're seeing price drops, and they're getting less than where they originally listed. This is my dance-off slide, the takeaways, devil's in the detail. Every neighborhood, every type of home is going to be different. So you got to find somebody who's skilled in the market and can peel back that onion for you to figure out how to position you for the right time in the market that you're listing. Homes positioned to attract ready buyers are doing so in 2 to 3 weeks, depending on the county. So we used to see like 6 days, right? That was what was more typical. And we saw a lot of that in early spring, and we'll probably see a lot of that in early 2026 as well. But those are the homes that are priced very well for their condition. And I would have to tell you guys, the lipstick is still mattering a lot. HGTV is what I call it. They're expecting that grand reveal and everything to look great. The number one factor in market success is smartly priced, market informed pricing, but then delivering to the greatest extent possible that HGTV experience with its showing. All of the lipstick done, staging, well marketed. If you can't deliver that HGTV experience, you gotta be reasonable about the pricing. February through May continues to be month after year the time when you see the best potential to get your home in a buyer's hand quickly and for at or above list price. All right, guys, it was a little longer than normal. I hope that that was helpful for you. I'm so glad you tuned in. If you have more questions about your home, please give us a call. We'll help. Bye-bye.